9.3, proposal parameters for divestment of Port of Tauranga shares by the Quayside Group. Mr. Taylor and Monique.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, councillors. So this report in front of you is the culmination of a process that began over 2 years ago. Through your long-term plan development in 2023 and 2024, you consulted with the community and received feedback. Council subsequently included the enabling of a managed sell down to no less than a minimum 28% shareholding of the Port of Tauranga strategic asset in the long-term plan. The process requirements and the need for a carefully managed step-by-step consideration of how to optimise any divestment has now led us to this point. This financial year, Council has at confidential workshops received advice and information that has sought to establish a cohesive and comprehensive set of divestment parameters. These recognise the LTP consultation feedback and the desire to provide and clarify a commercial mandate for Quayside. The parameters set out in the report have been developed by councillors over a series of these workshops where staff and independent consultants have provided advice, and we've received clear direction. In the report, there are 3 parameters that I've highlighted with options included. The recommended option for each of these is included in the recommended parameters. The next steps following approval of the parameters have been carefully mapped out, and I'd like to explain a little bit more about these to give councillors an indication of what council has already done and will continue to do through the process. Council approved statement of expectations for Quayside have sought confirmation of a review of a fit for purpose Quayside entity following any divestment and the significant change this may have on the asset portfolio and arrangements required at Quayside. Council has made it clear that the transitional arrangements for the use of funds following any divestment are limited until Council has determined any future arrangements it wishes to establish. This includes a future review of dividends expectations, policy settings for the future. There are existing tax efficient structures in place for the Council Group. This includes Quayside itself and the Toi Moana Trust, which Quayside manages on behalf of Council. The review of the group tax position has begun, and as set out in parameter 4E, Council is expecting that there will be important tax considerations when determining how to treat transactions and funds within the group following any divestment. As outlined in the report, the statement of expectation and statement of intent are key tools in outlining the key accountability measures for the divestment, and Quayside will respond to these parameters through its draft statement of intent. To give Quayside more time to respond, Council may wish to be clear about these matters in a statement of expectations to Quayside so that their draft SOI can be prepared on the basis of the approved parameters and the next steps outlined in this report. It may be also prudent to consider and allow Quayside a 1-month extension to the statutory timeframe, usually the 1st of March every year, to give them time to fully respond. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Firstly, to start off, I just want to thank staff and Quayside and all of the experts that have given us wonderful advice and analysis to guide us in the development of these draft parameters. And I'd like to reinforce today that we're not actually approving a sale today or any transactions. But the implementation of any transaction within parameters set is for Quayside to manage. So this is just us setting the guide rails for Quayside. So I'd just like to pick up on your point, Matt, about the SOE and the SOI being really important documents for us to guide Quayside and for us to get the additional information we require to give us that level of confidence on any proceeds from divestments. So I'd just like to signal at this point I've got an amendment or a new resolution I'd like to pass, but I'll mention that now or later.
Oh, you can mention it now. Okay. It's a new resolution.
Yes. So this is a new 5, and what I'm asking is as a recommendation that Council directs staff to prepare a statement of expectations on the basis of the parameters. This should include matters including future use of funds, given some group tax optimization, future dividend and CYPA policies. And Council also approves a 1-month extension to the timeframe to allow Quayside to develop its draft intent based on this additional statement of expectations. So I'll be moving that we include that recommendation.
I'd second.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Thompson.
Then I've got 2 questions I'd like to ask
Councillor
the,
Nees.
Chief Financial Officer before we debate the parameters. How do the parameters that are being set today protect the many local investors that have their savings tied up in the Port of Tauranga and its future prosperity?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the port is and continues to be a critical part of the economic infrastructure of the Bay of Plenty. And if the parameters as set out in the report are approved, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council will, through your CCO, continue to be a cornerstone and major shareholder in the port. And also it will continue with the existing arrangements that are in place that oversees and monitors performance of the port for all shareholders, both large and small. Divestment of part of the shareholding provides for diversification and a sustainable dividend. That's what council set out in its consultation document, long-term plan. Those were the objectives that you were very clear on. So the parameters align with the expectations that were set through all the communications and the commitments in those documents, and they therefore provide this robust and clear mandate for Quayside.
Thank you. And then my other question, we've already had a little discussion about the statement of expectations and the statement of intent, but now we've got the parameters. What's the process that's going to be followed?
So through Mr. Chairman, with the development of the statement of expectation, the process for the managed sell down begins after the parameters are set. So based on the parameters that you set at this meeting today, they're being passed over to Quayside to begin the managed sell down process. There is a specific step-by-step process that Quayside have shared confidentially with council, and that is in your papers. There will be a number of steps that they will need to undertake. There's regulatory frameworks that they need to adhere to, announcements they may need to make. So the draft parameters set the framework for that, as Councillor Nees has pointed out, but there's a number of managed steps now that Quayside need to undertake. And I would just like to suggest that nothing will happen quickly or in the short term. It's expected that this will take some time for Quayside to manage and go through those steps.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Scott.
Thank you. And I would also like to thank the work that the staff have put into bringing us to this position. In particular, I want to comment on the consultation process, because quite often you get comments that say, we've done a consultation, but have you taken any notice? And during the consultation, we had a reasonably split feedback in terms of playing yes or no. But when you looked at the no's, there were reasons that people gave. And for those who involve themselves in consultation in the future, those comments are really useful to councillors. So as part of our process, we have looked at some of the comments that people are making and said, what are your concerns if this was to go ahead? And I think the resolutions we have in front of us today address a lot of those concerns. So if you look at the parameters, there's an emphasis on making sure that there is the national and local benefit is considered. There's still a significant holding that the council will have to make sure there's still community ownership at that level. I support the suggestion that Councillor Nees has made about a statement of intent, because there was questions from submitters about what happens to the investments. And also like to reassure the community that who are worried about how this will impact rates and so on, that and in the paper there, you'll see there's a graph that shows that the intent is that the return from an alternative investment will be greater than what we've had thus far from the port. So we've listened to submitters, and these parameters, I think, really deal with many of the objections that they came up with, and for that reason, I'm very happy to support.
Thank you, councillor Scott. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I notice councillor Nees's flagged amendment has been moved and seconded. Is that open for discussion now, or?
I'd rather deal with the preliminary or the priority issue first, because it's not in opposition to the substantive issue we're to make a decision on.
Perhaps you can clarify my point now. I just want assurance that that amendment is that we have a separate motion, and that it won't be part of the guardrail parameters as such, because I just don't believe we should be conflating the two issues of the divestment with any reinvestment. Happy to support it. I agree that in principle, but I do seek assurance that we're not making it one of the guardrail parameters.
That's my understanding, Mr. Shirley, but councillor Nees.
Yes, it's a separate resolution, number 5.
It's your understanding as seconding it, councillor Thompson? Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, I too would just like to thank staff and Quayside to get us to this point, and am fully comfortable with having these parameters and having listened to our community, and believe that this is a really fantastic opportunity to have that diversification, not all our eggs in one basket, and a sustainable dividend going into the future here for future generations. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, councillor Thurston was first in the lineup.
I'll defer to the lady on my right.
No, age before beauty.
You are a lady, go for it.
Councillor Thompson.
Oh, thank you. Well, like everybody else, I too want to acknowledge the staff, Quayside and advisors. I think that we have been very well served, and I know a lot of effort has gone into this. I also want to acknowledge the submitters and certainly agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Scott that the submissions were incredibly useful, and we have done, I think, our best to have regard to concerns that came through. Just acknowledging that Councillor Nees has pointed out that we're not making any decision today. We're just setting the guardrails. But Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could just suggest an amendment. Councillors will note that under F3, we provide that Quayside would have the opportunity to report back to us in due course if, in their considered opinion, the parameters are not commercially optimal or achievable. And so, Mr. Chair, I wonder when I go to 4C3, I wonder if colleagues would support an amendment to that suggested recommendation, which would read as follows. Subject to 4F3, which I have just spoken about, which enables Quayside to come back and talk to us, and as far as is practicable, ensure that the port's operations continue to support the local and national economy, and this includes minimising the risk control passing beyond the preferred Australasia Pacific region. So, Mr. Chair, what I'm really trying to do there is simply to flag that this may well be a matter that Quayside decide or not, that they need to discuss further in the course of their considerations. But so I propose that as a proposed amendment to 4C3.
Thank you, councillor Thompson.
Second.
Seconded, councillor Thurston. So what I'm going to do is take that amendment, and we'll deal with that first, but then change as a substantive recommendation in terms of 4C3. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion in terms of the amendment put forward by Councillor Thompson, which is now in front of you on the board? Councillors. Yes, Councillor Shirley.
I still have difficulty with the reference to Australasia Pacific region because, you know, the Pacific does include Russia, China, Canada, Japan, Philippines, West Coast, North and South America. It's a very vague general. I support the indication of the message that we're trying to convey, but the actual practicalities of the wording is rather strange.
Thank you, Councillor Shirley, and I understand the intent of this is in some way to recognise the feedback that we had in the LTP. As you rightly suggest, the practicality of this will rest with Quayside in terms of being able to address this. And as Councillor Thompson rightly points out, that in 4F3, that is an accommodation if they find this too difficult. Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, I just want to support that. I think it is really well laid out there, and as you said, Chair, the intent I think is really clear, and I'm really happy with that change of point 3. Thanks.
Thank you. So is there anyone who wants to speak against the motion? Amendment, sorry. The amendment. If not, I'll put the amendment. It's very clear, it's up there. All those in favour of the amendment say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. So that means the amendment becomes part of the substantive motion. So I'm now going to open the floor again for discussion on the substantive motion. Councillor Thurston.
Yes, speaking to the recommendations that are before us, including the new one, personally, I feel I've been incredibly well briefed over the last 2 years, and I too want to add my thanks to Quayside and the consultants, and in particularly the staff who've participated in this, and to you, Matt, and your team. They've gone far beyond the call of duty. But as I say, it's been 2 years in gestation. And for my constituency back in Rotorua, I hope history will record that the decision that we made today is timely and commercially appropriate. And I'd also like to acknowledge publicly that I'm very happy where we landed with regards accommodating the aspirations of Manu Whenua. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. Councillor Von Duddleston.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting in support of the resolutions. I think I did have concerns with 4C1, the aim to have the Port of Tauranga at no more than 50% of the Quayside portfolio investment assets. This, I recognise, is an aim only, and so therefore, yeah, I can live with it. I think if the word aim wasn't there, it would mean that we risk having to rebalance portfolios. So having a tight 50% is in itself is restrictive, but because you've put in the word aim, I can live with that. The second one is the matter of control, and at 28%, I have been in favour of a higher figure than that, probably 35 to 40% rather 28, but I recognise the changed wording that says, although dependent on sales, a higher portion may be retained. So there's flex. That paragraph has given some flexibility in there, so that at the end of the day, it will be Quayside who will make the final decision, but through the SOE and SOI, we will have a very good contact with Quayside, so that they have an understanding of us and our requirements, and vice versa. The history with Quayside and this port and this council has been superb in the past and has, the engagement has greatly improved, and I've got absolute confidence that, with the, current board in place, that we'll be well served going into the future. So, Quayside has been a fantastic asset, for the council, and the Port of Tauranga has been a fantastic asset. And while I, don't have any problem selling it down, I personally see it as a, quasi monopolistic investment, with the port, with the depth of the port and the ability to handle the large container ships. And so I'm very happy to see that we retain a substantive shareholding in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Von Doddelson. Councillor Nees.
Well, thank you. Actually, I guess I'm going to be echoing a few of Councillor Von Dodelson's comments, because in my time on council, the Port of Tauranga has served us extremely well through its oversight, through Quayside's oversight. And I don't want this decision to enable Quayside to consider divestment or to initiate divestment to be seen as in any way any lack of confidence in the Port of Tauranga's future. My support of this is solely on the recommendations coming through from our expert investment advisors that we carry a large concentration risk in our investment portfolio, with the current holding of the Port of Tauranga making up 80% of Quayside's investments. And it's really that action to minimise that concentration risk, but also to ensure that we are well placed in the future to maintain a sustainable dividend stream that is driving me to support these parameters. Like Councillor Von Doddelson, my level of comfort around the floor that we would hold is I'd prefer to have retain a higher percentage than 28%. But I think we have to leave that in the hands of Quayside to negotiate that. But I am noting that we have got a rider in that resolution on control that, depending on sale proceeds, a higher proportion may be retained, and that's what gives me the level of comfort to support that particular parameter. Also, with regard to the one on diversification, it is just an aim, because Quayside will have no control over the movement of the Port of Tauranga share value, or other than making very wise investment decisions on maintaining the proportion of their portfolio value above 50% outside of the Port of Tauranga. So both of those are stakes in the ground that I would hope that our Quayside directors consider the ultimate best outcome, not just commercially for the value of the portfolio, but also for the people and the local and national economy, and also for the benefit of the region. The other comment that I wanted to make is with regard to the parameter on Mana Whenua, which I do support, having had the opportunity to play some part in the consultation process that we undertook with Mana Whenua of Tauranga Moana. The initial opportunity, I just want to note, there may be other parties that have given an initial opportunity, but this initial opportunity is for Mana Whenua's extreme interest in the Arohi to be taken into consideration, to give them the opportunity to also engage in discussions over purchase of shares. And I'd also like to make the point that Port of Tauranga doesn't just operate in the Tauranga Rohe, it also operates in Timaru, it operates in Northland, it operates to some extent in Auckland, and also in the Waikato. Yes, so we have to recognise that there will be other tangata whenua or mana whenua who will have an interest in the operation of the Port of Tauranga. But what we have recognised through having face-to-face conversations with Tauranga Moana mana whenua is they have got prime position to coordinate the interests of other tangata whenua and mana whenua around the country. So that enables them scale. And they are, I have to say, they are very excited and enthusiastic about the opportunity. So saying that, I do support the resolutions. And I just think that through the statement of expectations that we'll be updating in the statement of intent, we as a council will get a level of confidence around the implementation of these parameters and the positive outcome for our region.
Thank you, councillor Nees. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we all appreciate that our role is not to do the divestment. We are the enabling, empowering, providing those guardrail parameters in a permissive way. So I think we all have a clear understanding of that. And I think the discussion's been very robust and very thorough. But I do want to draw colleagues' attention to clause 4F1. And that is that any and all transactions are to be consistent with expectations set in the long-term plan 24-34 and consultation document. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. That's very important. And then we've got, which included continued listing of the Ports of Tauranga Limited shares on the NZX. I'm not sure that that last phrase is necessary, because if it is stated in the consultation document, then we already have it covered. And there may be various interpretations of what is in the consultation document. So I think it would be wise to actually have a full stop after consultation document, so that would read, any and all transactions are to be consistent with expectations set in the long-term plan 24-34 and consultation document. That would include that if it's in the consultation document. So that last phrase is not necessary. And to that end, I'd like to move that we complete that with a full stop after consultation document.
Thank you, councillor Shirley. So you are moving an amendment.
And
Is there a seconder to the amendment? So the amendment lapses from want of a seconder, Mr. Shirley.
that's that.
Councillors, any other comment? It appears not. So just before we move to the resolution, I need a mover and seconder. Could I make the following comments? Before I move to the resolution now includes the amendment that has been made by councillor Thompson and passed. So that forms part of the substantive amendment here. Is everyone clear on that? The new resolution proposed by councillor Thompson, councillor Nees, I will deal with after the movement of the substantive motion. So because we seem to have run out of commentary, I'd just like to acknowledge especially councillors, but also staff, in terms of the journey we have been on, which started in terms of consultation and adoption of the long-term plan. This matter for this council and community has been and will continue to be a substantive matter. This council has owned our shareholding in the port since 1989-90. That's a long period of time. There have been several occasions where this issue of financial prudence, risk management has been raised, and the appetite at the time from elected members then was not to proceed. However, as I said, in terms of our long-term plan or consultation, the result of that consultation, the result of those deliberations has ended up to the resolutions we've got today. So let's be very clear. The objective here is twofold. The first is to minimise the risk in terms of holding a portfolio of assets in the one entity. The objective here ultimately is to create an endowment fund for the ratepayers and the community of the wider Bay of Plenty. Could I just compliment you on the discipline that you've demonstrated as a council over the period of time that we have developed this proposal since the long-term plan? And the discipline is required because the entity that we have currently 54% shareholding is a listed company. As a listed company, it is subjected to external and third-party rules, regulations that people outside this organisation will be watching in terms of the way that we deliberate and present this to the public. Out of necessity, because of the commercial sensitivity of some of our deliberations, we have conducted several confidential workshops as we work through that. And as I said, that is a necessity because of the commercial sensitivity, being a listed company in terms of where we eventually end up. Could I thank you for your understanding in terms of this whole process and dealing with a listed company? Could I thank you for the rigour that you've applied not only to staff, but to advisors in determining the rationale and the justification for the position that has led to today's resolution. I know it has been challenging, but could I applaud and thank you all for the way that you've deliberated and handed ourselves in this position today where we've got a resolution in front of you. So with those comments, can I have a mover and seconder for the resolution outlined? So it's moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Winters. There being no.
Can I just
Councillor
clarify?
Winters.
We're excluding Jane's
We are.
resolution.
We're dealing with that next. It is
Right.
not part of the parameter setting
you.
that we've
Yep.
got here.
Yep.
Any further discussion? So it's been moved, seconded, no further discussion. The resolution now outlined on page 91 through to 93 with the amendment that I've previously spoken about. I'm going to put now, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Councillor.
Can we have a show of hand? Is that unanimous?
No one said no, so I'm taking it was unanimous, Mr. Winters. That leads us to the other motion that we've got on the table, which can we have up, Donna, in terms of the screen? So this is an associated process-related matter that councillors would like considered and presented to Quayside.
The two councillors had to leave the table, but for this, would they be eligible to come for this vote, or do they still need to not be?
No, Mr. Crosby is at the back of the room. He's quite welcome to come to the table. He doesn't wish to until we deal with this, which is fine. Noting he is a director of Quayside and Quayside Holdings, and the SIPO and the Statement of Expectation is a document that works through with council here, and Quayside is a recipient and feeds back in terms of that. So that is the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? There be no further discussion. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. The councillors' next agenda item is 9.4 Regional Fairs Review, revision of the Western Bay Zone. Mr. Williams and Oliver Haycock. Welcome, Oliver. Where
Tēnā
where you go, Oliver?
koutou katoa. Councillors will recall that over the past few months, we've been working through a regional affairs review, the substantive elements of which were adopted by council at your meeting on the 11th of December. This was in exception to the zonal fare structure, which supports longer distance trips around the Bay of Plenty. Staff are asked to review the boundaries, especially in the Western Bay of Plenty, with a view to making fares more equitable compared with those in the Eastern Bay. And this has been looked at by staff on the basis of charge per kilometre. Staff were asked to bring this revised zonal structure back to council for discussion, which is what's presented in the paper that you have in front of you. Staff have presented two options in the paper. The first option is the zonal structure that was proposed as part of the original review. The second option takes into account the work that has been done looking at the cost per kilometre travelled. Happy to take any questions.
Move the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Thurston. So councillor Nees.
I have to say, I also support the proposed adjustment to the Western Bay zone. I think it's given us a much more equitable fare structure, but it's also much simpler structure for people to get their heads around. So I'm hoping that with this adjustment to the zonal structure will encourage much greater use on the buses between Western Bay and Tauranga. And I thank staff for turning their attention to this and bringing it back to us in such a timely fashion. So thank you.
You, councillor Nees. Councillor von Duddleston.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favour of everything other than the actual zone physical boundaries themselves. I think by making the Tauranga Zone 1 so big that goes out to Omokara and goes to Makatu defeats some of the purpose that we're trying to do in with zoning. If anything, and it was raised at the Public Transport Committee last meeting when it was discussed there. There was a request, or it might have been the Joint Committee, that Tauranga be looked to actually have an A and a B zone within it, because going from the end of Papamoa into in through town and out to Tauriko is a huge distance, and what we're not encouraging is somebody taking short bus routes up Cameron Road, for instance, from the city to the hospital or whatever. We have the same fare structure now. What you're proposing here, and this is a change to what we currently have, we're proposing a change from someone coming in from Omokara into the city, that would be the same fare as going from the central city to the hospital. And that does not seem equitable to me. And I remember doing the mathematics on the cross subsidisation of between the user pays and the council and NZTA payment. And I think the total fare cost from someone coming from Omokara into the city was $65 is the actual cost of based on patronage and those big buses. And you know, to make that, you know, so we're already heavily subsidising that route, and sure, we bums on seats will if we put more people on, that does help, but we don't want to get to the stage that we've got to, and it looks tempting when we look at somewhere like Queensland, where they have a 50-cent fare for no matter what they do, no matter where they go. But what they don't tell you is the state of Queensland has levied the coal exporters 12 billion Australian dollars to help that, to put into the coffers to pay for that sort of cross subsidisation. So they've had a 20% increase in fares by having a standard 50-cent fare for anywhere within the state of Queensland. You can go for 4 hours on a bus, train, whatever, for 50 cents. But there is the true cost should lie where it's derived from, and this zone, making that zone as big as that from Makatu to Omokara and Taurika on one side, up the Kaimais back to the coast is too big, and I think it's a mistake. The original inclusion was for Te Puna, and I supported Te Puna being part of the city, but I don't support going as far as Omokara and to Makatu. I think Makatu and Te Puke should be a zone B, and as is shown in option 1. Thank you.
So can I just clarify, Councillor Von Duddleson, you're chair of the Public Transport Committee. Are you offering this resolution as presented by staff has been moved by Councillor Thurston? Are you speaking against it or just offering an opinion?
No, I'm speaking. I'm speaking for option 1 in the paper.
So that's against the recommendation sitting here on page 119. We just need to be clear about that.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Before Councillor McMillan starts, she did actually second that motion that I.
Oh, had you?
Yeah, so
Oh,
can I
sorry.
speak?
I
Can
didn't
speak
realise
to
that.
it?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so I have a different view to Councillor Von Duddleson in terms of option 2 being it definitely is more equitable. And if you think about the reality of people travelling into the city from further out of the Western Bay of Plenty, often people who are on lower incomes live further out. Not always, but often they live further out. And so therefore, to create equity for somebody to have to travel into the city who lives further out, I believe they shouldn't be stung to have to pay more to move around the district in which they live. So having this broadband in option 2 really addresses that. And I don't think it's fair that somebody who happens to live in Makatu or Te Puke to travel, for example, into Tauranga Hospital or to a job in the CBD should have to pay more. There is also more opportunity, and it's not for everybody, to walk or cycle if you do live in the inner city. I know some people aren't able to do those things, and we do have concession fares for people who are impaired and unable to walk or bike for whatever reason. So I think if you put in all the concession fare parameters that we have and the option 2 zoning, it really is, and these things are to an extent a blunt tool, but I think this option does provide the most equitable solution, and that's why I've seconded the recommendation and I'm in full support of it.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. Is there any other speakers in support of the resolution? Councillor Scott.
I have a question. I note, first of all, I'm in support of option 2. I think it encourages the use of public transport. The cost in the paper is $3,000, which is a very low amount. I'm interested, though, if there's been any work done on how any targeted rates. So at the moment, a ratepayer in Tauranga is the targeted public transport rate is just under $400 from memory. Is there any impact on the Western Bay targeted rate?
Through you, Chair, for the purposes of this paper, it's relatively difficult to calculate because this comes in as revenue, which then goes towards offsetting costs. So we've given that this is quite a high level forecast, just given you a rough indication of the likely revenue implications. The reason that number is relatively low is because at the moment we only operate a limited number of services to the locations that are impacted by the changes in the zonal boundaries.
And just sort of really to put the obverse of that is just to remind people that the kilometre rate ends up to being about a third. The kilometre rate for a person buying a ticket ends up to being about a third of what it would be if they took the car, if you use the IRD rate. So it's a very good deal for public transport users. So recognise that we are providing an 85% subsidy for these trips.
Thank you, councillor Scott. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put the resolution. It's outlined on page 119. It's moved by councillor Thurston and seconded by councillor McMillan. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 125, Toy EDA. Thank you, Dean. Well, we seem to have the appetite. Councillors clearly read this, makes a lot of sense. So councillor Thompson has moved, councillor Campbell has seconded. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 129, voting referendum. Mr. Groom.
I was hoping I'll get this straight moved and seconded too. So this paper responds to discussion you had around the voting system in August 2023. During that discussion, council expressed a very strong desire to be guided by the public in any changes to the existing voting system and asked that we consider whether a referendum should be held alongside the 2025 election on voting systems. As you'll see, the paper recommends, for various reasons, not doing that with this election, but proposes some ways in which you could test the community's appetite for a changing voting system in the lead up to your next scheduled decision on voting systems. With that said, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Groom. Speakers. Moved, councillor Winters. I'll second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Electoral officer, Mr. Groom, keep going.
Cool. So this is an information only paper which outlines the continued appointment of Elections NZ as our electoral officer provider. I will take it as read if that's okay and move to discussion.
Mr. Winters.
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask a question, please? It might be pulling a long bow. Because Tauranga City Council don't have elections this year, do we have funds in our budget to cover this totally?
Yes. So that was part of your annual plan, part of the annual plan package. It will be significantly more expensive than usual because we're basically going to have to run the Tauranga election ourselves. But the short answer is yes, it's covered.
Democracy is expensive, Mr. Chairman.
Right, it's been moved by councillor Winters. Have a seconder? Oh, sorry, Mr. Campbell, seconded by councillor Campbell. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. AJ, financial performance item 9.8.
So this is the financial performance report for the first half of the year. I'll take the report as read. You will see that we have changed the format of the report to look similar to what you will see on the Power BI dashboard. If we did send out the link last year, December, if you don't have it, we will be sending it out again today, just so that you have the link to the Power BI dashboard. And then also, if you have any questions, you can just email it directly to us, or we can discuss that now.
Thank you. Board's open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Nees.
Oh, thank you. Just a query. On page 143, under rotor catchments, we've got a variance in the capital budget of or roughly $900,000. And the reason is lower than budgeted variance due to delays in the engineering solution. Which engineering solution is that for? Is that the Ohau wall?
Rotorua. Anything else, councillors?
Yes, Chair. Just one question on that, because the Ohau Channel is something that is in front of us right now. Where are we going to look for money for the repair or demise of the wall on the Ohau Channel, please?
So I should answer this. Before you go, AJ.
Councillors, I believe that there's a report coming on our wall and options in April. And then we are also working through the annual plan process, which is with next workshop coming up in March.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll just get the Chief Executive to expand on that, Councillor Campbell, because there has been a provision made in terms of some exploratory work, but what you're concerned about is a major capital spend, if it is to come to account, where that's going to come from. And essentially, as AJ said, that it hasn't been scoped or deliberated on. Fiona?
Yes, and this was a discussion at your December council meeting, and you recall that in the minutes of the December council meeting that the opportunity to consult on a targeted rate is not available for this project because you're not consulting on your annual plan. Staff are working hard to get that paper to you. It may be a special council meeting because the timeframe we have is the end of March. That was what we were seeking to do. And so that's what we are doing. And at that last meeting, you talked about potential options for funding. That will be included in that paper.
Through the chair, just obviously we won't know what sort of funding we're going to be asking for because we need to know what the options are from an engineering point of view, obviously. So it varies from a patch-up job to a complete renewal of the wall, I guess. So that's, it's, but I want to make sure that to do nothing option is off the table at this point in time, because there's a few people out near that channel right now that are a bit grumpy with not only us, but with the previous mayor. Sorry.
Right. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, just on page 137 at the top there, it says about capital expenditure remains on track. And I just want to highlight for that for colleagues and just have you confirm again, because in the past we've missed being on track. So we're 6 months out, but that's a very confident statement by the sounds of it.
Correct, Council. Here to date, we are over budgeted, and it's from our forecasting, it is projected to be on budget.
Okay, councillors, I'll move the resolution. Seconded, Councillor Winters. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So that moves us through